Hello and welcome for today's SpeedAdmin Academy webinar of November 2024. We're just going to let the last people join in the webinar before we get going, and I think we are almost ready to go. So welcome to today's webinar. This month we're focusing about sustainability in music and art schools. The idea for this session came about when Music Mark announced that sustainability would be their main focus or theme at their annual conference this year. And we were invited to give our input on our perspectives on sustainability. And that sparked a long discussion. Of course, we've been aware of sustainability and the need to be sustainable. In a country like Denmark, it's a big trend. There's a lot of awareness about sustainability, but still suddenly having to put some answers on, well, what do we do and what do we want to do in the future? That started a long discussion, and also not least, what does this mean for music schools? So we got to think about how can we do more? How can we truly get started in a good way? And how would we do it? So there was a jungle of questions that was growing up in front of us. So we thought, how can we get through this jungle, or at least get an overview of how to get through this jungle? So we found a local sustainability hero, and this person has started several companies. He's a multiple entrepreneur and an amazing person. He knows everything about sustainability, we expect, let's see. And he's also a very good friend of the house, and he is here from Sønderborg in Denmark. So please give a warm applause and welcome to Emil Busch.
Thank you very much, Thomas.
Hello, Emil, and thank you so much for being in the studio. We really look forward to your insights, and I won't be talking much more because I'm not the important one here today. I will just mention, if you have any questions during this webinar, and this is of course if you're seeing it live, then please write in the chat and we will follow up either in the end or ongoingly as we go through it.
Yes.
But the stage is all yours, Emil, and thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you so much, Thomas, for the warm introduction. So, hello everyone. As Thomas already mentioned, my name is Emil, and here's a little bit brief introduction to me. So, as he just said, I have started several businesses up. All of them have this in common, that they are focusing in some way or another on sustainability. And what I find to be truly, truly amazing is when you can actually start a business where it also comes together, and it's not only making you an economical growth, but also making you a sustainable growth. So let's dive a little bit into the topic further. So the purpose of the webinar today is, of course, to explore how can a music and art school become better in this? What can we do? What can a school do to become better at maybe reducing their consumption, but at the same time actually making a good impact both for the economy, for the social being, and for the world. So, first of all, what is sustainability? Sustainability is a term that we use over and over, and we hear it constantly. But do we actually know what sustainability means? Is it just starting to become this phrase that we just say, yeah, this is sustainable? So, for example, like, is electric cars, are they sustainable? You can ask some people, they will say yes, and others will say no. But let's look a little bit further into the definition of sustainability. So, when we talk about sustainability, you've probably seen this graph before, but we're talking about a triple bottom line, which is called people, profit, and planet. And those things, they kind of intersect with each other, and they are stable. So that means that they are all equally relevant. But if we look at today's society, this is not really the case. The way the world runs is basically looking like this. If they are intersecting, it's not a lot, and we clearly see that profit is the main dominance of the way how we make decisions. So what we are trying to do here in the modern world is to say, well, we need to get these things to intersect more, and we need both people and planet to play a bigger role. So that it actually intersect and makes sense. And with this way, and this is what I find really interesting, you see, the profit, it doesn't necessarily need to be smaller. Actually, I believe that when we combine these things, everything can grow into a bigger case and you can create more value for every aspect. And this is what is sustainable. So, if we start to look a bit into some examples of what can we actually do, we need to have these 3 points in mind. So, we need to think of how do we actually make it that it's both sustainable in an economic perspective, in a person's perspective, and in an environmental perspective. So, the Royal Theatre here in Denmark, they have looked into their costume department, where they have a lot of different costumes that they have simply just been storing up, and a lot of these materials were simply just being thrown out after a show. So what they found was we can utilize these items way better. We can actually start to take one item and set it apart and reassemble it, and this was both sustainable in the way that they became economically more sustainable because they didn't need to go out and buy new expensive textiles every time for doing this, and they actually started to creating some jobs because they had some people that could actually start to sew these things together again, and of course it has a greater impact on the environment. So this is just one example of where you're starting to think we have these resources laying around, how can we utilize those better? Another great example is, of course, instruments. So if we look at music schools, they have a lot of different instruments. And if we look at them, one thing that you can start as a music school to think about is where do we source our instruments from? Through the research for coming here today, I found there is actually a lot of manufacturers in the world. They are producing more and more sustainable instruments. So really also consider where do you get the things that you use for teaching people to learn to play music, and also the same for arts. Where do you get these resources from? Are they just fast produced somewhere in the east, or are they actually sourced in a sustainable manner? So here there is a lot of things that we can look into simply. Then digitalization. I think another big word that is coming up nowadays is AI, and I also see AI as an opportunity for becoming even more sustainable. So, for example, we have in Malmö, they have a live concert hall where they have also tried to digitalize everything. That means everything from when you order a ticket to the brochure, the show, telling about it. By that, they have reduced all the paper. So they are completely paperless. One additional thing that this leads to, not just consuming paper, is also now they have actually track of everything. They can get data on how they are performing. So they started to also see a business potential in it, because they could say, how do we do things better? Another way is, of course, also we saw it under Corona, where we saw that there was coming more and more Teams, Zoom meetings, online places. And some places have also started to introduce this for teaching. So instead of that the students has to travel to the school, they can actually do it at home, avoiding to use pollution for transportation. And it has also created this opportunity for them to actually right away be where they need to be and do the teaching in a what can you say, calm setting where they feel comfortable about it. So digitalization brings a lot of opportunities. Leading back to the AI, I also believe, and I generally think, that music schools needs to start to think also, how can we incorporate AI in a way where we actually start to use these tools in a smarter way, because it will lead to a competitive advantage. And this is all that matters. Like, we need to think about it. How do we utilize the different tools that we have around us? Energy consumption. Well, it's straightforward. We see it over and over, and it's also something that more and more organizations, companies, which is what I often work with, we see this is the first thing they do. So we have Louisiana's, what are they called? Sorry. It's the Louisiana Museum of Modern Art. they have introduced, you can see all these solar panels that they have on the roof here, right? And this is something that they have done because they have actually sat down and said, we want to be the most sustainable music and museum in the States. And how do we going to do this? So thereby they actually made a sustainability strategy, which you can read here. I think later on these slides will be available so you can see them. And then from here they actually put in a whole plan on how to actually turn their place into a more sustainable way, not only with having solar cells, but also getting a lot of sensors in. So back to the technology, measuring where do people move around, when do we need to have light in a certain room, when we don't need to do it, as well as actually using the water flow that was running out there to also power some systems for them. So there is a lot of opportunities. I think what is really important is to take a moment to step back, sit down and look and see, what can we do? What is the opportunities that are given to us? What do we have around us where we can see that? And then again, think about it. How does this, because it's not only for the environment, and that's really important for me, because if we only think about the environment, well, then it's neither sustainable. It has to make sense in both an economically and a person and a profit way. So this way that we actually see, okay, I can do this, I will save some cost, I will maybe create some new jobs, or I can take some other people that were maybe out of the job market that they can now help us. This can be a social impact. It can also be, as an example here, where we have a boarding school in Denmark, efterskole, where they have actually started to say, we have all these instruments, and often, especially in the summer break, no one is using them. So what they wanted to do was to encourage people in the village where the boarding school was laying to start to play music. So therefore they actually opened up the boarding school for people of the city to come and try, and they could even borrow the instruments with them home, and thereby they created this feeling of, oh, I can learn to play a new instrument. That's cool. You're creating something, inspiring the youth to actually become into this. And this is another important thing, because I just read a report the other day that if you look at people, like this is of course for the job market, but 75% of the people that starts to work in a company now, they are not only telling themselves, is this a job where I can make a good profit? Is it a job where I think the tasks are interesting? No, they also think about, how do I actually create purpose here? And this is really, really relevant also for music and art schools in acquiring qualified employees. That is to say, we are also taking an action on this. We want to become more sustainable. And of course, it's not going from 0 to 100 in a day. You need to do some small changes. But I believe that everyone can do it if you start to look at what is the opportunities that we have around us. And this is what I wanted to say with this webinar today. That is, I'm not going to be concrete and saying you can do exactly this, because it depends on where you're located and what resources you have available. But start to look at what is the opportunities that we are given, and then start to think about it again. How can we foster this to maybe even create a new business model where we can foster it? And this leads a bit to the inclusion, right? Lastly, we have this, one second. Exactly, this is the National Gallery of Denmark, where they have done a lot of exhibitions where they have actually included local communities for a more sustainable projects, where they have really looked into how can we create this atmosphere for the youth that they start to be inspired, instead of that we just hear about it in the news and everyone is talking about sustainability, but then being concrete and telling the kids, what do you think is sustainable? Can you paint it for us? What would be a sustainable way to draw a new house? And so they start to getting these ideas and thinking about, how could the future look? How can we actually change this? And this is something that music and art schools has a great opportunity, and you have a lot of audience, which is the future of tomorrow. And these people, if you can start to grow this little seed in their minds, they will actually come up with great ideas that will lead to that we will sort of solve a lot of the issues and challenges that we have of today. So, What all of these stories I just told you have in common is they are winner stories. These are good stories that has been made out in the media. This is the way I found them. So, and this is really relevant for you as well, because by becoming in the media is first of all, they need something to write about. And a good story for them is something where they can see we are locally engaging. Well, if you're also doing something environmentally good and they can actually show that it's a good business case, that's a really good story for them to put in the press, to tell around in the world. And this leads to, of course, some of the people that are funding you. So I know that a lot of music and art schools, they are governmentally funded. And these people, the decision makers there that are deciding on the budgets on how we need to spend our money, well, they also care about that where they put the money in is actually filling up their agendas. And a lot of these people are running on elections of becoming more sustainable. So if they can see, oh, the music and art schools, they're really doing a good job in actually fostering this more sustainable environment, well, then they think, let's keep supporting this, maybe even put even more money into this industry because we can see it's working. So it's all about thinking about how do we actually influence also the stakeholders that we have that is influencing our institutions. So with those words, I think it's really, really important to sit down now, have a short moment to actually think about what can we do where we can make this good story, because this will seed, this will grow, and thereby you will also get encouraged to do it more and more and more. But it only takes this one step to have this idea of we could start to do this a bit differently. So yeah, now I want you to sit down for a moment. If you have a pen or a computer, probably you have a computer in front of you, then note down some ideas. Just think about how can we reduce our environmental footprint in your program, and what kind of sustainable practices can we introduce to our students. So is there some things that you can do, and then please again align it with the 3 principles of people, planet and profit. And then I hope to see some comments here in a moment, but now I will just give you a short moment to think about this. And meanwhile we do this, then of course the idea with this was actually because I know you're busy. I know you need to go back and then time's running again. So this was actually taking the time out to sit down and being able to just come up with this good idea where you can see, oh, maybe it was some of the things I suggested here, maybe it's something different. Then you actually can now go out and say, hey, I think we should do this because we can make a profit on it. We can actually encourage people to come to our institutions and use it even more, and we're doing something good for the planet. And that's a winner story. Yes. Good. I don't know, can you see if there's someone that's texting stuff in?
Nobody have shared any great ideas yet. I'm sure there is a lot of great ideas out there. So either they don't want to share just yet, or...
That's fair enough. I think again, the whole idea with this is also just to spark this little... yeah,
this one now?
That's one here, yeah, exactly. So there's invest in higher quality instrument, which last longer and can be repaired. Yes, I think that's a very, very good point. This because quality matters. It's really like, where do we source them from? Where do we get them? So yes, this is very clear. And I think also, again, as we mentioned before, can we utilize these instruments even better? Can we actually think about, are they just standing on a shelf? Because one of the things, if you look into, for example, what we believe in is things are made to be used. So they should not stand somewhere still. They should not collect dust. that's not the purpose of them. So if they're standing still, what can we do to utilize them better? Is there someone else that can use them in a safe manner? Can we do something to actually get these tools, etc., out to live? That's just a simple thing. Again, this thing with the lightning, right? With lights as well. Like, okay, do we just have lights running around constantly, or can we actually maybe put up a sensor so it turns off when there's no one in the room? Can we start to measure when there's high activities, etc., etc.? We have another one here. Yeah. Develop programs for teaching and to remove the need for our teachers to travel between schools each week. Yes, also a very good example. So there is a lot of these things, and this is my whole point. And this is once we start to inspire each other, and I think it's great that they have taken this up for the big event, because it will really lead to sharing these ideas. What can we do? Because lots of people have the same issues they are maybe also thinking about, but this with just having the good idea and then making it, as I say, again, getting it out in the press, that is what inspires people to say, oh, that's a good idea. Maybe we can do that as well.
And of course, this is something that we also find really interesting, how this digitalization, as you also mentioned, I mean, how that goes hand in hand with, that could be AI or digitalization all in all. Also having the videos there suddenly also speaks into our, which we talked about before, using the digital teaching platform and flipped classroom or whatever method it is that you're using. So that's very, very interesting as well.
Exactly. So if we just jump here. Yes, we had the Q&A, exactly. So with this, I also hope that there maybe are some questions out there in the crowd that someone that wants to know better. I can try to see if I can answer it. Yeah, I don't know if you have any questions from this.
Yeah, absolutely. While people are writing, I guess sometimes you think, because you said, well, if we start with the simple way of thinking, where do things come from that I use? Is it sourced in a sustainable matter, or is it something that's just really cheap? And I guess often we think, because I know music service, they don't have a lot of money. They have to think about how they use their funds and use it in a good way. And I guess the example with the instrument there was a good idea. But is it often the cheap things that you have to buy to make ends meet?
I think, as they say here, right, like, investing in quality always makes sense, because it lasts longer. I mean, there's a reason why things are produced cheaply. So often it's because it's of a worse quality than if you actually get something that can sustain longer. So I think in that sense, but also maybe thinking about, can we get quality? Maybe not necessarily. Can we buy it used? Can it be used already? Mm-hmm. Does it need to be brand new? Yeah. I think this about thinking, does it hurt that it's been used half a year, maybe for a professional concert? I don't know, like, I'm not an expert on this, but maybe they don't want it because they need to have the best of the best constantly. But for a music school, maybe it's good enough for the students, right? So then they can get the high quality for a lower price. And this is, again, an opportunity, because all of a sudden you can take the orchestras, they can see we can actually source our instruments to the music schools. And maybe when the music schools find this is not good enough, maybe they can say, maybe some of the students wants to get them with them home, or there can be another organization that can take it. Because I believe this is like the value chain. It needs to kind of keep it at the highest level continuously before we say, we cannot use it anymore. And then, of course, we should try and see, can we upcycle it? Okay, so then give it to maybe a repair shop, give it to someone that can say, hey, this, and that's actually a good example, because I know a lot of repair shops here in Denmark, and they would love to get a lot of these equipment. So for them, it can also be like, if you cannot utilize it anymore and you cannot find a place, give it to a repair shop. Maybe they can get something good out of it, so that they can actually use it, connect it together, and all of a sudden you have a well-working instrument or a well-working art tool.
Yeah. So it's actually both when you buy stuff, see if you can buy it secondhand, but also if you buy something new, ensure, and that's perhaps the most important thing, is that don't just leave it on the shelf there. If you're not using it anymore, try to push it on, get it out there, get it to still add value to other people.
Exactly. And I can see we have a few comments.
Yeah. So there was a good idea here.
Yeah.
from Fridolin, optimize travel between classrooms. Absolutely, and I think that's I guess also a good idea for us to look into in SpeedAdmin. How can we actually in the system perhaps do some things where we could optimize, because digital tools, there are a lot of options there.
Exactly.
Here we got one from Natja in Norway. In Norway, the future for cultural buildings will be instead of building new music schools, we use and redesign already existing buildings.
Yes, and super Nadia, because this is exactly what we mean, right? We see also around the world people are tearing down buildings that actually works really, really well. Maybe they just need a small adjustments and they can be utilized again. So yes, very, very good example of, again, it's also often more cost efficient.
Absolutely, and that also makes the equipment that is sustainable. So yeah. And I guess in sustainable, again, there, because we had a short discussion when I say, well, we are super, I'm aware of sustainability. I bought myself an electric car. And you say, well, is that greenwashing? Or is because that's another perspective where I find it becomes a jungle. It's difficult. When is it sustainable?
Exactly.
You got a little bit of advice there, because when is it, what can we trust?
And this is the thing, right? Because of course, there's a lot of influence, and right now we see the market moving towards everything needs to be sustainable. So everyone is advertising that this is sustainable. I think it's also good to think about, like, because usually when we talk about electric cars, I like to show a picture of Africa where there's sitting people mining cobalt, which is used for making these batteries, and it's not a really social, environmental friendly way. And what do we do with this cobalt afterwards? We don't know. So this is what I like to challenge with exactly this example. I think often, like, use sense, like, think about, okay, how can we actually utilize it? And I think, again, yes, an electric vehicle can be sustainable. It can be better if it's for the right purpose. If it's like it has to be commuting around in the city where we can actually charge it continuously instead of having a big diesel, and well, then maybe consider using an electric vehicle. But over and over, it's about looking at the greater picture and understanding it a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. So no easy ways out, but yeah.
Sadly not.
Oh.
But that's again what I think. Like, this is also what I try to approach here. Like, you have the opportunity because you have a lot of the youth sitting with you on a weekly basis, and they have the good ideas. And we need to inspire them. We need to inspire them even more to think about sustainability, because we don't have all the solutions for all that. So if we can actually foster this mindset of how do we come up with the good ideas that can, well, maybe we have it tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess also just using some of the, and that's again difficult. I was going to say good companies that's out there. Now we know you're a good guy. We know the companies you have. It works good and tells the truth. But there are some good companies out there, of course, and there are also some that will try to make you think that they can help you be sustainable. But there are a lot of help to get out there.
I think now, of course, there are issues where we don't have the solutions, but when you go around, there is a lot of solutions out there, and people are really, really solution orientated. So I think if you dig into it and you see, oh, we have an issue here, you actually, and again, I know we are busy, we're all running fast, and so on. So this, of course, but if you see an issue, then take maybe just time to look into what is the solutions, because there is often a solution for this out there already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple here that's a little bit alike from Fridolin and from Ruth about scores. That's of course sheet music, and scores is an important thing in music schools.
Yeah.
So either printing on both sides or not printing at all, because we can digitize them.
And I think if we talk about the youth, they prefer digitalized things. Like myself as an example, one of the first thing I invented was actually a thing to avoid having paper, because I was like, I throw it away. I don't know where it is. So with the digitalization, it also brings a lot of additional that you can always find the stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely, I totally agree. Yeah. And that's also getting into the young people's turf that you're talking about, the way that they think, because they are digital.
From birth.
Yeah, exactly, from start. But also sustainability for young people. I think we have to be aware, and I say we as old generations, that for them it's even more vital. They think much more about it. It's also a question of well-being here, because a lot of young people they struggle with thoughts and fear.
And I think especially when you look at the media, we see a lot of things. We just seen what is happening in Spain. It influenced us as adults, But imagine your kids, like if they see this in the news, right? What is happening? What is happening to the world? They keep hearing it, and it has an even bigger impact on them. So of course they want to figure solutions for this. And I think that's also why it's a good opportunity to sit down with them with something that they love to do and have this talk saying, we are actually finding solutions. You can just see here, we have done this. This is actually improving it. So we are working, and all around the world they are trying to solve this. So encouraging them to actually say, we are working towards, and if you have a good idea, maybe tell it to us. Maybe they have the solution for it. Yeah.
Well, and have them engaged. So because I think some of the fear can also, well, what can I do about it? It's out there in the huge world. What can I do? But actually empowering them in giving them options. Well, what do you have some ideas? What can we do here at the Music and Art Schools? Or how can we do an event that is green? Or how can we make an event that inspire others to be
exactly more. And this is the social part, right? Because then you try to include them and you actually get them to be very motivated about this, and they can see this matters, this has a purpose. We're both doing it because of our interest to art and music, but also because we're actually helping the world.
Yeah, because I have to admit, when I first heard the Music Marks, that the theme there was sustainability, I was like, oh, not here as well, because we're all hearing about it, we're also talking about it, but are we actually starting putting questions in and doing a plan for how we can do it? Yes. And I think that was nice. Music Mark did a good way of involving us as those that are having exhibitions there, and I think that's important that we involve each other and we start talking more about it. Doing a plan.
Yes, and I get that you can be tired of it, right? And it's like, and that's why I like to take it in this pragmatic approach, because we can all talk about the big picture and that we need to save the world and so on. But let's be honest, it's just small steps along the way. But if we all do small incremental steps, it makes a massive difference. So this is really like, just try and see if you can just improve one little thing. That's better than not doing anything.
Absolutely. There's just a couple of good examples as well, more that I just want to share here. And then I also want to ask you, I say the chat is still open. If you have any questions, you can ask in there. But I would also think, as a music school leader or a teacher, I say, well, I can see it's relevant, and I can see that I can remember to switch off the light, but how do I get started on a higher level? How can I do more? How do they get started? Where to start? Do you have some good ideas?
Yes, I mean, I come from a business world, so for my way, I'm sorry out there if it's not working exactly for you, but my way will always to look at how do we run our business? Like, how is it we get customers, students? How is it we get funding? Look at what is the different stakeholders. There's actually, maybe sit down, draw it, and then see where can we make this impact in? Where can we include the impact in so it grows to this bigger? Because again, at the end of the day, if I was an investor, if I was the government that wants to invest in, I like good media press, I like good attention. So this with having the good stories, creating the good stories, well, that leads to, again, funding it all. And then coming back to, we don't have too many money right now in music school. Well, maybe if we're actually starting to see this and the government can see, okay, if kids goes to music and art schools, we actually change the whole mindset because they're really doing it. Well, let's put more money into this. So I think it's about seeing what is the opportunities there are there.
Yeah. And I guess really that along with a plan, when we talk about digitalization, what we've talked about previously at other webinars, do a plan, make a serious plan. Don't just sit down and complain. We don't have enough money. We don't get enough money. You make a plan about how digitalization can improve your business, reduce cost, but that you can add more value at the same time. And it's the exact same thing here with sustainability.
It's a simple business case.
Yeah.
I mean, because it never
simple
helped.
And simple, but
yes, but it never helped to sit down and be like sad about it, right? It's better to be proactive and then see okay, this. Present it to someone. Maybe they say, this is a great idea, we want to fund in on it. Maybe it's the municipality. We have this idea for this event that can create focus on sustainability. We have focus on culture. That's something they love. Then maybe they can pitch in some money for it, and then you have something started. You get a good story, they get a good story, everyone wins.
Yeah. A very low-key idea could be write sustainability on a piece of paper, put it up in your wall at your office, And then when you're sitting there working with, let's say, preparing the next teacher meeting or inset day, how can we actually touch on sustainability? Should we actually talk to the teacher about how they can be prepared with their students about sustainability?
Exactly. And I think now, if people go and look into the comments here, there is a lot of good examples.
Absolutely.
So maybe take them with you and say, is there some of these we can do?
Absolutely. There is also a question here, perhaps more to SpeedAdmin than to you, sorry.
All good.
If SpeedAdmin is considering the impact of his digital storage, it would be great if we knew what data was being stored in greener service. And we can actually proudly say we're using Unit IT. Unit IT is our hosting partner. They're experts at keeping data safe and secure, and they are also very, very safe and secure about the green and sustainability. They're actually they use wind power for all their electricity. You can go into Unit IT. We can put in a link as well. They have done a lot of work, and they have also done a first what's that called?
Reporting. Exactly.
What's it called?
ESG.
ESG report. Yes.
And not to get too deep into this topic, but this is also something that's coming from the EU. It's a part of the EU Green Deal. Maybe some of you know it, where they're really trying to foster that people start to reporting on what do we actually do instead of just saying what we did back in. With CSR, there's coming this ESG reporting, and that leads to that you see companies like them that are really trying to do it because otherwise they lose their customers. So it's all of a sudden becoming a really issue, a real business case for them to get this.
And you're absolutely right in also following back on your value chain there, because as you all sit here, we're green because we shut off the light, but then SpeedAdmin, they have all kind of data and we use AI. It all takes up electricity, it takes up power. But how can we ensure the value chain that those people that are doing that for us is also using green energy?
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's also going steps back. But that's also, again, as you say, it gets more complicated, of course.
It gets more complicated, of course, but I think, again, it's just the small steps. And as you say, start with a piece of paper, write down some ideas. Let's see what we can do. Once you get into it, it's like learning to bike. We need to get this process going a couple of times, and then we get better at it.
Yeah. And perhaps not just being greener, but also starting the conversation and inspire.
Yeah.
And there we have a unique opportunity.
And I think having exactly this mindset of saying, we don't want to talk about the greater good picture because everyone would be like, oh. Yeah. But saying, what can we do? Just one small example. This is the topic of today. We want to figure just one thing that we can do, that we can be concrete about, that we can start now. I mean, this is again coming back to the economy part of it, right? It needs to make profit sense as well. What can we do socially? And then where does it actually have an impact? And then people are concrete. This is a task that you can actually measure. Then you're starting to do something.
And I guess that's a key word, being concrete, because sustainability, we all know it's vital, but it's also really fluffy and it will somewhere out there in 100 years will get flooded, but can't really relate to it yet.
No.
Being concrete, I guess that's a great takeaway.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to add, Emil, or any questions out there? You still have a chance to throw it in.
I think I'm very curious to see like where this will go. Like I will definitely continue watching the music and art industry, and I truly believe that now I'm soon having a kid that needs to go into this as well. So it's like I hope also that from sending my kids to music and art schools that they will actually inspire them to think in this way. So this will be my hope.
And if you need help out there to get started, I think you can...
Yes, absolutely. If you are interested in linking up with me, feel free to do so. My name is Emil Busch. And I have this company that's called Clever Sustain, where I help businesses to actually get an overview of where are we, what can we do to start this. And of course I look at it with a business perspective because it needs to make sense for you economically as well. So really getting into deep of where do we stand. And this is my mail, so feel free to reach out to me. And otherwise than that, I just want to say thank you very much to SpeedAdmin for having me today. I hope it was not completely waste of 45 minutes of your life, but that you actually got maybe just this little tiny idea that you can use to start on this journey. Thank you very much.
Well, I was already inspired, and thank you for giving us the overview of the jungle. Now we know how to get started at least, and there's so much we need to do still. So let's help each other out and get started. Yes. So a quick one here for you, Emil.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your inspiring talk and all the great input and also being concrete.
Thank you.
And thank you all for attending.
Yes.
Hope you have a great day out there.
And thanks for all the great input.
Bye.
Bye.